My name is Muhammad Zahid Chaudhry, and that question, really, where am I from? Well, I'm from Cascadia bioregion. I am from Washington State. Um, I have lived last nearly quarter of a century of my life, or most of my life, here in the United States than anywhere else. But before that, I lived in Australia for 6, 7 years, and before that, I was born and lived in Pakistan. My father, as a 10-year-old, young person, a boy, he saw that, and my grandmother, they were refugees when the British Empire imploded, and overnight they became refugees. My grandmother grabbed her parents and my father and all, and ran to the tall crops, and they saw that their own home being, their whole village being, first they take all the men out, killed them, shot them, then rape happened, and then they pillaged and robbed all the homes, and then they burnt. So my father saw his own home being burnt as a boy. Nobody needs to see that ever, let alone a young child. So, and it it is terrible things that happens if we lose our humanity. So I was already coming and staying some time at our family home here in Washington State. What happened is that after several visits and eventually fall in love, and with a multiple generation Washingtonian, and rest is history. So yeah, love happens. So it was. I came in '90s every year nearly for several years, and then I think 2000 I came, and then I was thinking of traveling, and then fall in love, got married, uh, and she didn't want to leave Washington State, and she didn't want to go to any other country or any other state for that matter, being Washingtonian through and through, and coming from a good farming background, and she didn't want to move. So I said, okay, I will have to live here, and I'm living here, and that's great. Um, then I joined the National Guard, Washington Army National Guard. They were advertising, they wanted, and I was also starting volunteering. So I had some jobs, and then I went from Washington National Guard to United States Army, and I served and all that. So yeah, it was, and I joined way back when, before 9/11, before there was a little surge, a short part-time surge for enlistments, and I joined long before that. So to me, serving a community, a society, a country that we call our own, it is very important to meaningfully and truly serve. So yeah, time in the service was good. I mean, when I joined, it was good. I mean, so I know two countries, one prior to 9/11 and one after 9/11. I joined military many months before 9/11. It was great, fine, and dandy. And I also served after 9/11. It was different. So it was different for immigrant. It was different being a Muslim or Muslim sounding name. My full name, the initial prefix is Muhammad. So Muhammad Zahid Chaudhry, even though the first and last name is same for every male member of my family. The middle name is which distinguishes us. So, and stereotyping and all that, some of that, not so good experiences, but yes. At the end of the day, we are some of our life experiences, and we are humans, and events, things like that affects us all. It's not a good or bad thing or whatever, but and people then develop a bias from that, over programming or whatever, or negative coverage of different ethnicities or different fellow human beings of our fellow human family, but considered as other, which were not others before. So there. So yes, I saw many differences, but the biggest differences were while I was traveling. I traveled so many countries before 9/11, and after 9/11, the whether coming to Blaine, Washington, at the border after spending a weekend in Canada, it was total different experience. I have done that many times, dozens and dozens and dozens of times before. I never had problem coming back to my own country. But after 9/11, I had lots of problems. When you come back, it wasn't, the secondary inspection wasn't another extra 5-10 minutes. It was 6, 7, 8 hours. Sometimes I was thrown on the ground in Blaine, Washington, and handcuffed. And they said to me that, they asked for, secondary verification. They said, park the car, come inside, blah, blah, blah. I came and my wife, and they asked me for ID. I was so innocent and naive. I gave them my whole wallet. They went through it, and they saw my United States military ID. And they said, and then suddenly, they started yelling and screaming at me. And then they threw me on the ground and handcuffed me and kept me for hours and hours. And they told me that you made this. I was told at that time that, you made this military ID in your basement, and it was so confusing. I said, why? He said, because it says, because you're a Muslim. I said, so why? I'm still not understanding. I'm not following you. What are you saying? He said, because there are no Muslims in the United States military. This is what I was told at Blaine, Washington border crossing. So, and I said, where does it say is that I'm a Muslim on my military ID? And guess what? It doesn't say that. It says Muhammad Zahid Chaudhry. I said, because you have a Muslim sounding name. So it is bias on a bias on a bias on a bias. It was so bad. So, same border, which I've crossed dozens of times. We used to go to Canada so often on road trips in summer. So it's just a little example of what kind of pain and suffering it causes on, ordinary, innocent, folks, average folks, yeah. Many ways. One way is this, So Muslims need not apply for citizenship, for earned citizenship. You see, United States Congress makes the immigration law. But the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, USCIS, which used to be called INS, because, I have all that institutional memory, so made programs, secret policies like this, which actually mandates the discriminatory delay and denial of citizenship and immigration rights to aspiring Americans, just based on race, religion, and country of origin. And we know by federal law, those are protected classes. We cannot discriminate based on that. But the department, INS, now USCIS, made those policies after 9/11. So I'm not talking about the Muslim ban 1.0, Muslim ban 2.0, Muslim ban 3.0, or the Muslim ban 4.0. That's the last 6 years. But I'm talking about the last 22 years. So we should keep our humanity alive, and we should use, discernment, that what are we doing. And we, the champion of human rights, we are doing discrimination in our own country to minorities. 50,000 families whose families are being torn apart because of these policies called CARP, or extreme vetting and all that. So yeah. So what happened is that I might not have left military because I liked it. It was good. It was wonderful. Especially prior to 9/11, it was even wonderful because there was not so bias or prejudice, perceived otherwise, and felt, definitely, and lived experiences. So I might still be definitely in and serving, because I liked serving. It's that public service which makes the lives of the society so much better. So I would be serving. I had some injuries in the Army, and that's why I was medically retired and boarded out. What I did quite a few things after that still. If you can't contribute physically, you can definitely contribute, as your mental acumen or other things, or your health allows. So I serve on several boards and do lots of other good things, even after my injuries, my head and neck and broken back injuries, and being confined to a wheelchair. But what I did a lot before that, I was a first responder, paramedic, and for the fire department, unpaid. So it's important to know. And same thing I did for Red Cross, several other things. So yeah. And that was the spirit, in the spirit that I actually joined the National Guard. First, not active duty army, which happened later. I joined it because they responded to forest fires, and I was responding to those anyway. And then mudslides, earthquakes, natural disasters. What are we as humans if we don't help out our fellow human beings in times of need? So, yeah, the spirit of service. How did I ended up in South Puget Sound? Okay, so I was living in Central Washington. My family has lived since the 1980s, so 40, 50 years now. And then my healthcare was closer here. I give you an example. One time in the Yakima Mosque, on a weekend I went to pray there, and I remember the rocks came in as usual, and came through. I was next to the window. It broke the window glass and hit me. And it's a few minutes of meditation and prayer and focus, and then I just had enough. So we just looked the other way. But that day I just went out and did a citizen arrest of those folks which were throwing rocks at the Yakima Mosque. So, and after 9/11 happened, lots of bad things happened in eastern central Washington to immigrants and communities. So, but I remember just comparison, right, side by side. But here in South Puget Sound Mosque, people came and they lit a candle, or they dropped some flowers. So for several years, it was just, environment was getting really toxic, especially in central and eastern Washington, for folks who look like me, so folks of color or immigrants and all that. So it was just getting a little too toxic. So that's why I moved to the Puget Sound. You can see there's lots of great immigrants who have come here and enriched Washington State so much. The first for example, the first health insurance exchange in the state of Washington was started by a Muslim. Yeah, eventually it was bought out by other firms, but it was started by a Muslim. And so many other contributions. University of Washington, the doctors, the surgeons, our tech industry, and all of it, all the way to farmers, who grows our grain, who grows our vegetables. So, I think it's just my grandmother said, Zahid, would you like to go to a garden which only has one color of flowers and one kind of aromas? Or would you like to go to a garden which has so many different colors, shapes, and aromas? So I prefer the mosaic, of that. And the garden, and my grandmother has the biggest influence on me. So I try to live my life by her teachings and lessons. They should know that it is a wonderful, beautiful, gorgeous place. And you'll be received, hopefully, most of the time. There's some bad apples anywhere. But as fellow human beings who will see you as a human being, first and foremost. So yeah, so immigrants always, there's a thing called Hamilton play or something, a musical. It says, we, the immigrants, we get things done. Why? Because you have that energy, that we need to get things done. We need to make the world a better place. And the more, in some cases, the more a person is oppressed or go through hard times, the more they will try harder to find solidarity, the more they will try harder to make that place better.